greatest hits on Manx Radio, and it's time for another classic album. Not just classic, magnificent, as is my guest, who knows a thing or two about putting these things together, because fresh from the studios in Ballasalla, Ballagroove Studios, Gyp Buggane, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
I can't believe I
Marc.
prized you out of there, but thank you for coming down.
No problem at all.
Going on to your choice of album, I asked you only a few days ago, how difficult was it to come up with one?
It was quite easy,
Whoa.
if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah, well, we like honest. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I like a wide range of music, and I've collected a lot of music over the years. But in the context of your show, it was quite clear which album to pick.
And tell us then what you've gone from.
Revolver by the Beatles.
Oh, you see, that is so on the money for me personally. It must have been, I'll tell you why, very briefly, it's your show, but I'll just tell you why. My sister's 21st birthday, and she's quite a bit older than me. This was on in her birthday. Birthday party was at home in like a basement of our old house.
Uh-huh.
And this was playing and playing and playing. And I was allowed to come for a bit.
Right.
And I don't think I'd heard it before. And that was it. That it became my anthemic album of growing up. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I've said if I ever had a time machine, I would go back to the day it was released and listen to Tomorrow Never Knows for as long as I possibly could bear it.
I mean, there were hints of where they were going in Rubber Soul, but this sort of paved the way for what was to come.
For sure. I mean, Norwegian Wood, some of the more unusual songs on, they probably don't seem that unusual now, but at the time, Rubber Soul was quite a departure. But then the gloves were off for Revolver. You know, there's a few normal-ish songs on there for sure, but the more experimental stuff, which is the stuff I lean towards, is I can't begin to imagine what it must have been like in 1966 to have heard those sounds coming from a band that were as huge as the Beatles. And, you know, from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Tomorrow Never Knows in 4 years is less 3 years, is kind of hard to believe.
It
really.
is, isn't it? It was moving so fast.
Yeah.
So very fast. And production techniques were leaps and bounds. Everything was being pushed. Can we do this? Can we do this? I want to try and do that. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, embracing ideas from the avant-garde and from experimental and left field classical music and techniques, and just inventing techniques.
Yeah, because you had to, because you couldn't go and buy things.
Yeah, you couldn't buy plugins for software to do what you wanted. You know, if you wanted to do flanging or like a flanger type effect, you had to touch the tape reels and, you know, slow them down. Or, I mean, one that I was reading about the other day about Lennon's vocal for Tomorrow Never Knows, which they ended up putting through a rotating Leslie, which is like a speaker that spins round. That's generally
people will see that with an organ. Yeah,
a Hammond organ. Yeah, it's a usual use for it. And that's what they ended up, or Jeff Emmerich, the engineer, ended up suggesting, because what Lennon suggested was that they suspend him from the studio roof and spin him round. So he flew round the studio with a microphone in the middle, and it would just pick him up as he went past. And obviously that wasn't entirely practical. So he came up with the idea of using the rotating Leslie, and you get that lovely sort of swirly effect on his vocal. But of course they had to, like you say, invent ways of doing things.
Right, where are we going to start on this sonic adventure, Gyp? Where are we going first? Tonight's track.
Okay, Love You Too, which is a George song. I'm pretty certain it's the first song the Beatles did that not all the Beatles played on. And in fact, on this song, it's only George who plays on it. It's massively significant song because it introduced world music, for want of a better term, to a global audience. Sitar had featured on earlier Beatles songs briefly, but this was the first song that was essentially an Indian song with George's lyrics on it. And it's not I Want to Hold Your Hand or She Loves You, it's verging into philosophical, spiritual, religious territory, which again at the time just wasn't done in pop music. It was just a whole new way of writing what you wanted, you know, rather than writing to what the audience wanted. Credit to them that they allowed George 3 songs on this album. Normally it was 1, but he got 3 songs on this album, and he was allowed to record an Indian song. You know, it's just, where does that come from?
And we'll hear it right now. This is from Revolver, Love You Too. Before we go back to Revolver, and again, I can't thank you enough for choosing it, what got you into the whole sound business?
I suppose the genesis of it. I mean, my parents are both big music fans, into slightly different music, the pair of them. My mum was very much into Dylan and she was into the early Beatles. She comes from Liverpool, so she saw the Beatles a lot in their early years before they moved to London. My dad was into rock and roll, and then into the sort of Laurel Canyon scene in the 70s, a sort of folky side of things. So I grew up with fairly diverse, but I also grew up with a huge influence from both my granddads, who were both heavily into music, and they carried around tape recorders everywhere they went, recorded every concert they went to, had huge collections of cassettes and reels, and I started doing that. I used to sit by, classic story really for my generation, but I used to sit by the Valve radio listening to the charts with a little handheld tape recorder, and then I'd take those tapes and start splicing them and playing them backwards, and I don't know why, but I just started doing that, hitting the pause button to speed up the head so it would record everything slow. And
are you sure you're not writing my autobiography? It sounds like you're talking about me.
That's the thing. A lot of people I talk to who've been involved in sound and sound engineering, recording, did this, but all in isolation of each other. It was just something you did as like a 7-8-year-old kid, and it seems an awful lot of people did it. And an awful lot of us have it in common, and I was one of those people.
And then the move into being a producer and an engineer in a studio, how did that come about?
Well, I'd always recorded, but I'd always played in bands and recorded bands from 12, 13 onwards, and recorded in by whatever method I had, whether that was like a ghetto blaster just put in the practice room, or then eventually I bought a 4-track cassette, and then eventually an 8-track reel-to-reel, then eventually a PC. That's the first foray into music you could edit, say. And I was doing that at home with bands I was playing in. I had a little sort of very much a home studio. Would record all kinds of bands. And then 8-9 years ago, I quit my career and took it on full time. and now I've got the studio, and that's been going for the last 8 or 9 years.
That's wonderful. That, I mean, I'm not being funny. It's a tough old business, running a recording studio. You look around the country and around the world, so many are finding it hard. But you're there, 8, 9 years on. So congratulations is due for that.
Thank you very much.
Look at our record of the week. Look at it, Revolver. I mean, the cover is magnificent. We got the vinyl here in the studio with us. It's just such an adventure, a sonic adventure. And as we mentioned yesterday, they were doing things, well, certainly I had never heard before. And this was every time the Beatles then moved forward. And they threw stuff at us. Just focusing on George Martin's influence, was he a driver or a facilitator?
I think a bit of both. I think the Beatles needed him, especially at this time, because the Beatles were falling out, essentially. Lennon and McCartney especially weren't on great terms at this time. And George Martin kind of held it all together. George Martin earlier on obviously opened an awful lot of doors for them with EMI. But I think in terms of arrangement and orchestration, George, you can't emphasise George Martin's influence. I think maybe on this album and the subsequent albums, the Beatles took what they'd learned from George Martin and ran with it. But I think, his influence is huge. And especially on this album, Jeff Emmerich's influence as well, who was the engineer. And engineers in those days were basically scientists, because as we were saying last night, they had to work out ways to create what the musician wanted, because there wasn't necessarily a piece of equipment you could just switch on. You had to invent ideas or build equipment, to get the sounds that they wanted.
Let's have another track. What's tonight's track, Gyp?
She Said, She Said.
Okay. Any particular reason for choosing this one?
I love it.
That's good enough.
Inevitably. Last night was a George song, tonight a Lennon song. Paul doesn't play on this, which says a lot about how well they were getting on. We used to cover this in the band I was in, so I've played it many, many times. And it's kind of, I would describe it as a prototype of all the indie music that came in the 80s and 90s. It's not entirely rooted in rock and roll or blues. It's going somewhere slightly different. And I just love it. That's why I chose it.
She said, I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it is to be sad. And she's making me feel like I've never been born. She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. Everything was right. I said, even though you know what you know, I know that I'm ready to leave, 'cause you're making me feel like I've never been born. She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. Everything was right. I said, even though you know what you know, I know that I'm ready to leave, 'cause you're making me feel
Before we get on to tonight's track, we mentioned a bit about technology, and we've talked a lot about how the studio was emerging as a tool and people were experimenting so much at this time. Do you think that now, if we look at absolutely right now, you can do almost anything in a recording studio, but you have to actually now work out what you want to do with all this fabulous technology, and if you're not being creative with it, it's almost like wasted.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. You know, it's boundless, you know, what you can do with a studio and what you can do with sound. I mean, it's just down to your imagination. But that doesn't mean you'll create something good. You know, you can go in and record a band and you can do it in a very standardised way. There's almost like a template for how to do it, and you'll get a certain sound, but that sound will be somewhat generic. You know, if the band haven't gone out a little bit on a limb to be more creative with effects or with arrangements or with orchestration. And the studio kind of makes that easier. I think it was certainly easier than it was in the past, but it's more difficult to come up with something unique because everyone has the same set of tools. So it's what sets bands aside now is just solely their imagination and their creativity, and of course their ability to play. But you know, that for me, as a sort of someone who's rooted in punk, the ability to play is second hand to how important your creative ideas are. That's far more important to me personally.
So you got all the tools. How much do you sort of, when you get let's say a young musician through the doors of Ballagroove, and you say, can I suggest a little bit? Do you wait to be asked, or are you helping them from the get-go?
It depends. Each project, every project is unique. Some people ask for advice and ask for help and want creative ideas. Other bands come in just fully formed and know exactly what they want. I'll usually suggest ideas if I can hear something, or I'll play people reference songs. So if they play a song and I'll go, okay, that's great, have a listen to this, and it may influence some ideas for if it's just for a solo or for a middle eight. Or I mean, a lot of songs that come in, and this isn't to the detriment of any of the younger ones that come in. I mean, they're on the start of their journey. But in terms of songcraft, in terms of having middle eights and having bridges and having intervals and things, they may not have really thought about that. So it may just be verse, chorus, 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 maybe the arrangement. So quite often influence, the actual song arrangement, and then the idea that songs should change all the time to keep the listener's attention. So you're seeding ideas. I think try and seed ideas with people, but try and then get them to actually come up with the manifestation of that idea.
It's a sensitive approach.
Yeah.
Let's have a track from this wonderful Revolver album. What's tonight's offering?
Okay, well, we had a George one, a John one, so I thought better have a Paul one. Paul's songs tend to be more standard. He came from the sort of music hall background and everything, so his songs tend to be jolly and happy, and they're sometimes experimental. But I chose Good Day Sunshine just because it's just a happy song and it just puts a smile on your face.
Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. I need to laugh, and when the sun is out, I've got something I can laugh about. I feel good in a special way. I'm in love and it's a sunny day. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. We take a walk, the sun is shining down, burns my feet as they touch the ground. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Then we lie beneath a shady tree. I love her and she's loving me. She feels good, she knows she's looking fine. she is mine. Good day, sunshine. 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 Good day, sunshine.
Greatest hits on Manx Radio with me, Marc Tyley, and my guest all this week on the Classic Album feature is Gyp Buggane, and he's chosen Revolver. We're still delighted, and I know what's coming tonight. I won't spoil it, but you have, in my opinion, Gyp saved the best till last.
I think so.
But we'll come on to that in a minute. Is there any form of music where somebody comes up to you and says, "Can you record this?" You think, "Oh no." I mean, obviously, I know your studio. I know so many bands have been there. But is there anything that sort of walks through your door and think, I don't know, I'm not sure, when it comes to a challenge to recording?
I don't think so. No, I'm certainly up for a challenge. The more challenging, the better. That would get my my oil flowing. You know, the idea of something that's going to be complicated and difficult. Music genre-wise, no, because I think what I've learned in the studio is I really enjoyed the process of recording and working with bands, and the music is a big part of that, but it's not the be-all and end-all, if that makes sense. It's sort of the genre of the music, the style of the music, doesn't really matter. You know, it's about just making it sound the best it possibly can.
Let's talk about this final song of the week. Well, I say final, I'm going to surprise you in a minute, hopefully. It's off Revolver. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so last song of the week, last song on the album, first song they recorded when they went in to do the album.
Was it? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
They recorded it all on the first day.
Wow.
And then a few overdubs. Tomorrow Never Knows. It's my favourite song ever. It's what I want playing at my funeral. It's just, for me, it's the most magnificent piece of music ever made.
And they're pushing the boundaries everywhere with this.
Absolutely. It rewrites the book. You know, it's using 5 tape loops, which was a method whereby a loop of cassette tape would run continue infinitely. They'd kind of slip in and out of time. They'd use the mixing desk as an instrument. This is obviously pre-computers, so they'd have the tapes running on the sliders, and they'd pull up the sliders and pull down the sliders in real time. So the actual recording is a performance. It's not just the band performing, it's the engineer performing as well from the tapes. The drums is kind of like a drum loop. It's heavily compressed, heavily distorted. As I said the other night, the vocal is run through a rotating Leslie, which is an organ speaker that spins round. The subject matter is about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Just everything about the song is just so far removed from anything that was happening at that time. The nearest you could probably get to it is stuff that was going on in contemporary classical, like Stockhausen and people like that. Yeah. Far more than what, you know, pop bands of the day were doing. As I said, I would just love to be able to go back and be one of the first people to ever hear that song, because I've listened to it so many times. It's just, I can't imagine what it was like hearing that song for the first time.
Well, for me, it was eye-opening. It was jaw-dropping. My sister's birthday, I mentioned right at the beginning, she was 21, and this was playing all night long. I'm not going to let you go. We'll play the track now, but if you can stay there, I'm going to bring you back for one more thing.
Okay.
Lay down all thoughts, surrender to the void.
I don't know how you describe it. You could use one word: awesome, outstanding. What would you say, Gyp?
Unique.
Yeah.
It's still, I mean, the only song the only band I can think of that have ever kind of really captured the sound of that is the Chemical Brothers, a dance band from the 90s.
Yeah, I love the
know.
Chemical Brothers.
Yeah,
I did.
they certainly, I mean, they were big Beatles fans and they're big fans of that song. I mean,
There's one particular song that resonates with me, and I can't think of the name of it.
I mean, Let Forever Be, the one that Noel Gallagher did the vocals on, it is pretty much Tomorrow Never Knows, to be honest with you. It's pretty much a rip. Yeah, I mean, the Chemical Brothers song on it in its own right is fantastic, but I mean, that was the best part of 30 years after the Beatles did it, and that was the first time anyone really captured that sound again. It's a prototype for so many things that went on in studios and went on in music in later years, and it still sounds contemporary now, 53 years later.
Now, when people come in and do this show, that's normally it. We had the 4 tracks, and they go have a cup of tea, have a lie down. But I know you were agonising over another piece of music, and I thought it's only fair to give you a bonus track.
Oh, thank you very
I'll
much.
give you a bonus track from a band, shame on me, I hadn't come across, Neutral Milk Hotel. Tell me about them.
Yeah, Neutral Milk Hotel. Choosing a favourite album, I've got 2 favourite albums of all time, or possibly 3. There'd be Revolver, there'd be In the Aeroplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel, and then any one of the albums by Spiritualised or Spaceman 3. But the one that was most appropriate for this show was Revolver. Neutral Milk Hotel are a band from Athens, Georgia. They were around in the sort of mid to late 90s. They did 2 albums on Avery Island, which is kind of very lo-fi and demo-y, but wonderful. And then they released In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, which is like a better realisation of the first album. It's hugely critically acclaimed. Everyone who hears it either never listens to it again, or it ends up being in their top 5 albums of all time. It's that sort of album. Personally, I consider it to be touched by magic. There's just something about it. Every time I hear it, I hear something new in it. Some of the song I've chosen is just Jeff Mangum, the singer and songwriter, and a guitar. It's just him and a guitar, and the way he uses dynamics in his voice and his guitar playing, to me, it's just outstanding songwriting. And his surreal lyrics, the orchestration on the album, I mean, there's Elian pipes, there's trombones. To me, it's similar to the Beatles in that it's kind of just saying, well, it doesn't matter what's come before, it doesn't matter what people expect us to do, we'll just do what we like. And there's something about that I really respect in music.
Well, you're a trusted friend, you're a musical guide, you're a wonderful producer, great engineer down at Ballagroove.
Thank you.
And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show this week.
Likewise.
So we needed to do this. Here it is, Gyp Bugane's bonus track. It is Neutral Milk Hotel, Two-Headed Boy.
Two-headed boy, all floating in glass. The sun, it is past, now it's blacker than black. I can hear as you tap on your jar, and I am listening to hear where you are. I am listening to hear where you are. Two-headed boy, put on Sunday shoes and dance round the room to accordion keys with the needle that sings in your heart, catching signals that sound in the dark, catching signals that sound in the dark. We will take off our clothes and they'll be placing fingers through the notches in your spine. And when all is breaking, everything that you could keep aside, now your eyes ain't moving now, they just lay there in their climb. Two-headed boy with fully lay there in their prime, two-headed boy. There's no reason to grieve. The world that you need is wrapped in gold, silver sleeves left beneath Christmas trees in the snow. And I will take you and leave you alone, watching spirals of white softly flow over your eyelids, and all you did will wait until the point when you let go.
Neutral Milk Hotel, Two-Headed Boy, a bonus track for Gyp Buggane on the classic album feature on Manx Radio's Greatest Hits with me, Marc Tyley. Keep popping back here on our podcast for more, as there will be more in the weeks and months to come. And thanks for listening.